I'm excited to introduce this episode of The Art Biz with Samantha Clark. Sam, as she is known, calls the island of Orkney her home. This is off the northern coast of Scotland. And Sam is one of those artists, is multi-talented artists who weaves visual art, her painting, and writing for exhibition catalogs, writing a memoir, and writing a weekly Substack newsletter called The Lifeboat. So I wanted to talk to Sam, who is also an artist writing coach, about how she integrates writing with her art, and also to build on the last conversation that I had on the Art Biz with Ann Miller about the use of Substack and how, why choose it, why it's useful for artists who like to write and connect with their communities, who like to build communities. Substack as a platform. Please enjoy this conversation with Samantha Clark. Hi, Sam. Welcome to the Art Biz.
Hi, Alyson. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here. Why don't you start by telling people a little bit about your artist journey and how you came to view writing as intrinsic to your practice?
Oh, well, now where do you want me to start? It's been quite a long journey.
You can
Uh,
start in the nearer present. You don't have to start at child.
right at the very beginning, I would be here all day. Yeah, I mean, I went to art school at 17. I've been practicing as an artist for a decade. The writing has always been alongside it, just as part of my habit. I would keep sketchbooks, but they would have lots of notes written in them. I'd copy out things that I was reading that were interesting, and I kept a diary. I was a bit of a diary keeper. I loved writing letters. Nobody ever wrote back, people get out of the habit. And I'd still write letters, and then I'd write long emails. And so the writing was always really there, but it was very gradually wanting, come out of the closet, come out and be seen in public. Very gradually. For a long time, I hesitated because I felt I wasn't qualified to write as a writer, but I couldn't ignore it really. And I was always doing lots of reading and research and thinking around my visual art practice. And it kind of, all of this material needed a place to live. And so I started to write a bit more seriously. Every now and then I would write my own exhibition catalogue because I just, didn't really like what other people wrote. So I thought I can do as good as that. I'll just do it myself. I did some art installations that were spoken word or recordings. And then I realized I needed to write a book. So I wrote a book, and that took me years and years because, again, it was a very slow and iterative process. And now I feel like I am a writer and an artist together.
Tell people who can't look up your work, what your work is like, where it comes from, etc.
Yeah, the visual artwork. Yeah. These days I'm a painter. And so what you would see when you look at my work is kind of semi abstract, but it's very much coming out of the environment that I live in. I live on an island or an archipelago of islands. It's Orkney. It's off the north coast of Scotland. It's surrounded by stormy North Atlantic and North Sea. We get a lot of wind and rain and weather. It's quite a watery place. I also live next to a loch or a lake with a little river running by. So the water is very much a theme in my work. I tend to start off working with very liquid washes, allowing the water itself to make its marks through evaporation and dribbling and puddling. And then once that's all dry, I work over the top of it again with many layers of very meticulous, repetitive drawing processes that create really complex forms over the top of them. So very layered and deep. Sometimes I'm also using reflective and refractive materials in the way that water is very reflective and refractive. So I'll use silver leaf or gold leaf, imitation gold, and mica flakes and so on. So the artworks are often they shift with each change of viewpoint in the way that water does as well. When your relationship with the water and source of light shifts, everything looks different. So that's a quick description of how my visual artwork is.
I've been loving looking at your images and the details of the images and the carousels and so forth that you post. And it does make me think that I am on your island with you. I mean, I have never been anywhere near there, but it does have that sense that it came from that place. How does living on such a remote island, such a remote place, how does that shape your work creatively and logistically?
Well, first of all, I would just interrogate that word remote. Remote from what? Remote from who? Because it doesn't feel remote here. It's its own place. It's a very, very creative community. It's got a long history of really quite high profile artists and writers and poets and musicians. It's a quite cultural place. It's very much its own place. We don't feel remote in any sense. But yeah, there's no getting away from the logistic issues of living across water. I have to ship work, it has to either go on a boat or a plane to go anywhere. And so do I, which in the winter can be quite a challenge because we do get weather and ferries and planes get cancelled. But it's also very much a community, and it's a to steal a phrase from the writer Annie Dillard, it's a good place to think with because it has an incredible wealth of archaeology. There's Neolithic villages almost intact just up the road from me. There's stone circles, there's Bronze Age stuff, there's Renaissance stuff from the 14th, 15th century, 19th century. It's all around us. And yet it's also very active in renewable energy development. There's work being done in prototyping marine energy generation through offshore wind, wave, and tidal power. So there's a sense of a really deep past and a sense of a really deep future as well. So it's a very thought-provoking place to be. And that, I think,
Wow.
shapes everything that I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do the logistics, I don't know how to say this, but do they confine you in any way? Like, do you think, oh, I can't ship this giant work, it's going to cost too much, or it's like logistically too difficult, or yeah.
It is a consideration. And certainly, when it comes to networking, I can't go and hang out at art gallery openings because, there are galleries here, but there's not that many. So I can easily go and pound the streets going to go and knock on doors. But yeah, you just find ways around it, and
Yeah.
your practice adapts and shifts. And one of the benefits for me of being here is that I was able for the first time to afford a studio with enough space in it to do big paintings and have them lying around for weeks and months on end while I work on them. When I lived in the city in Edinburgh, space was so expensive and at such a premium, could never really afford a permanent studio base. So I ended up working on my laptop. I did a lot of video art and installation. I did residencies. I would go and make the work in the residency and then come back home again and start planning the next project. So I worked very much on a project by project basis, or I'd be getting the funding and then going and doing the project somewhere. So it's actually enabled me to work in a different way simply from the economic point of view and the fact that space is cheaper here.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, we all have confines to work within. Yours just
Mm.
are a little bit different than most. For some artists, it's traffic, or
Yes.
and
Or the commute,
I
2 hour commute to
yes.
the studio. My problem is
Yeah.
walking from my front door to the studio door without the wind blowing the coffee out of my coffee cup. Do you know how long it took to work out? I just needed to use an insulated coffee cup with a lid. Problem solved.
I love that. How long have you lived there, Sam?
8.5 going on 9 years now.
Okay. And you moved there from Edinburgh.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because this is the art biz and because my
Mm.
listeners are always curious, what are your income streams and the percentage of each, rough percentage of each?
Well, it shifts. It's always it's never a fixed thing. I mean, you'll know an art career is constantly full of moving parts. So I generate income from mentoring and coaching. I generate income from art sales, and I generate some income from writing as well. Although at the moment it's quite a minor part, but it changes a lot. So, for example, last year I got a big award for painting. It was a big financial award, £20,000 to buy studio time, basically. So I carried on working with the clients that I had as mentees, but I wasn't going out looking for more. So the coaching kind of slowly went quieter, and I focused on the studio work. And then, of course, their money ran out, and I thought, "Uh-oh, I better get cracking on the coaching again," and just started to sort of open the doors and follow up leads, and so that started to pick up in the last sort of 6 months or so. Looking back, your question was useful because it made me look back. And the year before, there was more art sales. It was more like 50 between art sales and the coaching and mentoring. But when I drilled down and look at what the profit was, because making art, as you know, is expensive and there are an awful lot of expenses in there, the profit on the coaching was more. It was probably about 2/3 of my income that year. Whereas this year, it might be the other way around. And next year, who knows? So
Yeah.
it kind of depends on what my focus is at the time. So even the year before that was when my book came out. So that was different again.
Yep. 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 I understand. And by the way, that question is very helpful to most of my guests who
Yeah.
have to look back and check. Good. I'm glad
Yeah.
that
Do a profit and
to
loss every month.
glad to know that was helpful. And it's nice to have those streams of income, and especially because they both feed you in different ways, or
They do.
they
Yeah,
all feed
absolutely.
you in different ways.
Yeah, and that was one of the things when I was looking at setting up the coaching and mentoring was that I understood that my income from art was boom and bust. So there were times like this year when I've been really focused on making the work and I had to hold work back because I've got an exhibition coming up in January, February of this year. So I was not releasing work. I couldn't make sales. So there are ups and downs, but the coaching mentoring I do is more long term. Like I tend to work with clients over quite a long period of time. So that's the steady stream that evens out some of the boom and bust. Yeah.
Yeah. Is your mentoring, is it for art? Is it for writing, or for a little bit of both?
It turns out to be a little bit of both. So my background was in art schools. I was teaching artists, but then I moved into academia. I was teaching in academia. I was writing in academia, and then I did a PhD, and then I had a book published. So when the book was out in the world, it started to bring me writers, memoir writers. So I ended up working across both artists and writers. And I found it was maybe a bit tricky to explain what I do to people. So I had a moment to rethink it when I had the funding that allowed me more studio time and less time focused on the coaching work. Gave me a little space to think about where's my sweet spot in this coaching mentoring work? Where's my absolute sweet spot? And I thought it's right at the point where art and writing meet. So that's where I started to think, okay, I'm an artist's writing coach. And it is marketing 101, don't they? They tell you niche down, get really clear who you really serve best, and the others will come. So I am now kind describing myself as an artist writing coach, but I'm still finding other people coming who are interested. They maybe have a visual kind of slant, but they're not necessarily artists, but they're maybe more into memoir writing or narrative nonfiction. So it's still working across both.
Okay. Okay. So the artist writing coach that evolved, it sounds like, over time. And when did you settle on that? When was
That was just this year,
Oh,
really, to describe myself as what. So the work that I do with visual artists and their writing has a couple of different angles to it. So a lot of artists are very creative in a number of ways, and maybe like me a few years ago, harbor a desire to see what they can do creatively with writing. maybe they have, they write poetry, or they're just generating writing as part of their work. And then there's also the pragmatic side of understanding that we need to write in order to be able to communicate with people about our work. And there's also this incredibly powerful tool that anybody who's worked in education understands, that writing is a tremendous tool for self-reflection. It's where we really learn. And so even if you don't want to write creatively, just writing about your work is an incredibly powerful way to learn about who you are as an artist and understand, even just for yourself, who you are creatively. What are you really interested in? And then, the happy byproduct of that is you become more in touch with what you're interested in and more able to communicate that with fluency and confidence to other people.
I could not agree with you more. I have worked with many artists on their writing over the year because my writing came out of art history and working at a museum as a
Mm,
curator and educator, and I know how powerful it is to have those words to help connect people to
mm,
art. And so that's that part. But also, I've just witnessed so many artists who have just had so many aha moments through their writing or with just questions that I ask them for their writing.
mm,
So it's a real need, and I'm really glad that you are there to help fill it.
I think that writing also is slower. It slows us down. Um, And I find that my thinking works at that sort of speed. Speech is so fast, and it's there and gone, and thought moves really quickly and it's gone again. But writing slows us down, and it really pins the thought down onto the page so you can then examine it, and you can really think about, is that the right word? Is there a better word? I've got two words here. Which one's the best one? And you can hone what you're trying to communicate because it's on the page and you can see it and you can come at it again and again. So it's that reflective quality that writing can give us that I think makes it so valuable for thinking and clarifying what we're trying to do.
You just described it like the creative process, because that's exactly why many people enjoy creating is this slow down, this just the decisions that need to be made throughout. But let me just pick on that for a minute because of everything I've heard from artists over the years is I'm not a writer.
Mhm.
I can't write. I don't write. So defining themselves this way before they even try. But the thing I think that gets artists about writing, and I don't know how this is different from their work, but it is that there is this commitment to that word. You said you see 2 words and you decide, and it's like, "Oh, crap, which one's better?" Like, and then you see it in ink or on the screen or wherever it is, and it seems like such a commitment, like it's gonna, life or death, it's gonna be there forever. Do you find that in artists that you work with?
Yeah, but what's wrong with commitment? No, you have to make a decision. You have to stand by your work. Come on, make a commitment to this is what you want to do. I like to use an analogy. It's a bit like growing fruit trees, and you've got this big thick of ideas, and it's just really considered. Somebody who really knows how to grow apples will go into that orchard with their pruning shears, and they will open up the canopy of the tree. They'll cut out the branches. They'll let the air in, they'll let the light in, they'll let the sunshine ripen those apples. And that's what the editing process is. It's about this sort of letting the air in and clearing a space so that not only can you see what's going on, but other people can see what's going on as well. Because when all your thoughts are jostling for attention and you haven't committed to one or the other, how do you know what's going on? How can you feel confident about what you do and who you are as an artist? So actually, the commitment is also about confidence. And you don't come to that immediately. You come to it incrementally, gradually. Editing is the toughest thing because, they don't call it killing your darlings for nothing. And you do it all the time in your studio. So you take that skill and that mental rigor and apply it in the writing. And yeah, it is hard. Nobody said it was going to be easy. But it's also clarifying and confidence building, I think.
I think for some, it is this like, I'm already doing this in the studio. Why do I have to do it on the page also?
Mm,
And but but you're right. And I'm really glad that you are the one that said it. You're right that that is a commitment. It is, I think you said, make a decision.
yeah.
And it's hard. It is really hard because you are
Mm,
committing to something and there is this desire to make sure it's the right commitment. And you don't know that at the
yeah.
time,
Yeah.
but you need it to move on.
Well, I think maybe we can also reframe what writing is for. And when we write about our practice, what's it for? I think if you're thinking about it in terms of performing, like it's performing for you, it's a performative thing that stands on the mountaintop and declaims, this is what my work's about. Of course, you're going to feel really self conscious about it. But if you think about writing as opening a conversation, building a bridge, it's just helping people to see all this all the love and attention and thought that you've put into your work, and it helps them to properly see it. You're really opening up your work for someone else to come inside it with you. If you can think about the words that you use, whether they're spoken or written, as an invitation, as a conversation, as a way to build community around your work, then all the other kind of self-consciousness tends to fall away because, it's like a conversation between interested friends.
It's beautiful. I love that you compared performative to opening a conversation. And that's really lovely. I want to explore this, how writing helps you and how you think it can help artists develop your visual art. So, not just to reflect on it, but to develop it for the future.
Well, I tend to write about the things that I'm interested in that feed my work. So it's maybe books that I've read that have been interesting, or an article that I've read that's interesting, or an exhibition I've seen, or an artist who interests me. Their work has some resonance with something that I'm fumbling to in the studio. So I might write about their work or even just invite them and have a conversation with them. So it becomes like a repository for all of that research that feeds the studio. So it's not a linear thing, I do this and I get this breakthrough and then I make the painting. It's part of an ecosystem, a really rich ecosystem of conversations and books, exhibitions and artists and things I saw yesterday and, music that I've been listening to. All of that can become part of that ecosystem. So it's generative, and the writing helps that process to feel rich, that, you're never really stuck for an idea because there's so much to draw from.
Yeah. While you're talking about that, one of my favorite things to find out from writers is their process. So you say you write about it. Do you journal? Do you keep documents? If you read a book or you see a show, where do you keep that information?
I'm not very systematic, so please don't, listeners, don't do what I do. I'm,
They've
I'm,
got me to systematize
yeah,
things.
yeah,
That's my thing.
I've never managed to follow a content calendar in my life. So I have written hardback notebooks that I scribble in, and that's a sort of mixture of journal entries, diary entries, notes from books I've read, to-do lists, everything goes in there. As far as the writing process goes, at the moment, the creative writing is on a back burner because I've been so focused in the studio this year because of that award. But my Substack, I write that every week and I just block out time. Monday is writing day, bum on seat, get the writing done. But because I keep it to a weekly rhythm, it's always sort of on the back burner. It's always quite near the surface. So there'll be something in my mind gestating a conversation that I've had or something that I've made a note, oh, I must read that book, or somebody that I'm meeting, I bring people on as guests. So that'll be always quite close to the surface. So that when I have the time allocated and I sit down on the Monday to do it, it's all there because it's very current. I did think about making my newsletter bi-weekly or monthly, and I actually just found that harder because it meant it
Yes.
was more of an effort each time. It had gone completely from my mind, so I was like, oh my god, it's due. Oh god, I haven't done anything about it. So I actually just find for me a weekly rhythm. It's automatic. Monday, I'm going to bed on Sunday night going jigga 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 jig, thinking about it. I wake up on Monday and I go, right, okay, into the desk, open up the laptop, sit down, start writing.
So when you say open up the laptop, then do you have your notebook beside you and kind of go over the week, or are you going over that in your head throughout the week and you know
Probably
what you're going to
going,
write about when you sit down?
yeah, probably going over it in my head. If there's something in particular I know I need to look up, I'll go back and look it up. If I'm writing, for example, about a particular book, as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, oh, this is a good one. I'm going to write about this. This is really relevant. And I'll just be turning down the corners of pages as I go. And then I'll just go back through and see all the pages that I've noted and go, oh, yeah, that's relevant, and harvest some pieces. And, writing a newsletter is, it's got to be fairly short. So you don't need tons and tons. It's easier to have less and than to give yourself a huge task. People don't have time to read a very long email every week. So
Right. Well, you say it's short, but there's short but substantial. There's really juicy stuff there. How many words is your newsletter
oh, it
about?
varies, but it's usually around about 1,000 words, I think. Maybe sometimes it's a bit more if I've got like an interview with somebody that might be longer. If it's long, I'll do a voiceover. And I think you can get away with more when it's recorded. So if something's longer, people are more likely to be able to listen for 20 minutes than to sit and read for 20 minutes or, even longer. So that does give you more scope. But if it's written, I do try and keep it to about 1,000, 1,500 words, something like that. Sometimes a bit shorter as well.
And when you say voiceover, do you mean you just record? You just record what you wrote?
Yeah, it's very simple. I just use voice notes on my iPhone, actually.
Uh,
I sometimes throw a blanket over my head. It's very high tech. The
for
echo down
for the sound. Yeah.
for the
I should
sound.
have I should have a blanket over my head in this room too. So
Don't.
what made you you've been working on Substack, you've been writing on Substack for about 3.5 years as of this recording. What were you doing before that? How were you publishing before that?
Well, let me just correct you there. I've only been on Substack just over a year.
Oh,
Before that, I
sorry.
was just using MailChimp before.
Oh, okay. So you did that for 2.5 years and then you did
Mhm.
Substack for a year? Okay.
Yeah,
So
I moved it.
the newsletter has been going out for weekly for 3.5 years
Yes,
ish.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. In fact, it's probably
Okay.
more like 18 months I've been on Substack now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what made you choose it?
Quite a few things. One is that instead of paying them, you get paid. Also, I really liked the variety of tools that you can use. You can use video, you can have your Substack as a video vlog or as a podcast. But there's also a lot of inbuilt discoverability on Substack. So through the Substack ecology, people can recommend you, other Substack writers can recommend you, you can tag each other. You can use the built-in notes, which is a bit like Twitter inside the Substack app, um, to kind of also build, and you can make connections with more readers. So it does actually really help growth of your subscriber base.
Yeah. Yeah. Your Substack is called the Lifeboat. Why?
Well, when you start a Substack, you have a profile that's your name, but your publication is a separate entity. And some people have more than one. So you need to give it a name. And I was thinking of what I could call it. And I live on an island. So boats and water are sort of one of the themes that recur. And also creativity more generally, and the importance of creativity. And I thought that creativity is what helps us stay buoyant when things are turbulent. Always, that has always been my experience of it. I also wanted it to be to create a sense of community. So a lifeboat is something we all climb in together to help us stay buoyant in stormy seas. So it just felt like the right vessel for my newsletter.
That's lovely. I love that metaphor. It's so you publish on Substack. Were you using Substack as a consumer before you started writing on it?
No, no, not really. I'm not wittingly, actually. There was a couple of I'd been subscribing to for a while that I realized were because it goes into your inbox. A lot of my readers don't necessarily know it's even coming from Substack because it comes from my email address. That's what they see. Um, yeah, I wasn't really using much, but I was very interested to see what it could. So I basically just went straight in as a writer. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ask that because I subscribe to a number of Substacks, but I've never really gotten the hang of the app and being
Mm,
inside of Substacks from
mm,
people, even ones that I have paid for, which
mm.
honestly has just been one. But I found it very confusing, and that's on me because I haven't learned it yet. But I was just wondering if you've encountered any of that from
Yeah,
your
I think
side.
a lot of my readers are actually just reading an email. So you can see, you can go behind in the dashboard and see how people are engaging with it. So you can, it just goes out into their inbox like any other newsletter, and they open it and read it in their email like any other newsletter. And that is absolutely fine. They don't need to use the app. They don't have to. If they do want to go in and use the app, then there are other tools that are available. So, for example, I get replies from my newsletter, which is great, but nobody else sees those replies that come into my inbox. If they comment in the Substack, then they can have conversations other because it becomes, yeah, more of a communal conversation. So there are just more ways to engage there, but there's no obligation. I've got readers who I never go anywhere near the app itself.
Right. And if they want to comment, is there a paywall on that?
Some people do. I don't. I don't do that. No.
Okay. Okay. All right. But you have monetized it. You have monetized your newsletter. How does that work? What is behind that? What do people get when they pay?
Well, again, it varies. A lot of people use it in a lot of different ways. I made a decision fairly early on that I wasn't going to primarily use it for income generation, but a kind of experiment in generosity. If people want to subscribe and support
Okay.
work, then they can. And it's remarkable. People do because they appreciate if you're giving them something of value week after week after week, then there's a reciprocal generosity that people are welcome to make. So I don't put any of my posts behind paywalls. I also have a free weekly Zoom co-working session, which isn't behind a paywall. The only thing I put behind the paywall is the recording of the co-working session, which is more a question of respecting people's privacy than anything else. So, but that's just my decision because I want to use my Substack to build community around my work, to build conversation around my work, to meet other writers and other artists, and that's more important to me than using it to generate income itself. Because you need to have a lot of paid subscribers to make any kind of substantial
Yeah.
income,
Yeah. Because
unless
I
you put
think
your
your
Go
Unless
ahead.
you make your subscription rates quite high. I mean, some people do that, but I'm not particularly interested in that model.
As I recall, yours is like $6 a month,
Yeah,
or was
something like that.
that could have been someone. It actually could have been someone else I was looking at, but usually I've seen like $6 to $8 is about
Yeah,
what
that's
I've
kind of
seen.
normal, which isn't high. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't want to make it particularly high. And I also say to people, if you really want to subscribe to get the recordings and you really can't afford it, just let me know. I'll sub you
Yeah.
it. It's no skin off my nose. It's great.
Oh, that's beautiful. So how has your list grown, if at all, since you've used Substack?
Well, I started off whenever it was 3.5 years ago from absolutely zero. I didn't even have a newsletter, I confess. I thought, oh, I better do something about that. So I just went through all my contacts and I got people permission. I said, and start a newsletter if you want to be on the list. So I started off with about 40 people, most of whom I knew personally, all of them I knew personally. And steadily, week by week, grew very slowly, just sending a newsletter out every single week and kind of gathering email addresses through, some of them through social media, some of them through meeting people or through my website, the usual methods. And I grew that over half years to 600. And since I've been on Substack in the last 18 months, I've trebled that. I'm kind of nudging up to 2,000 now. And that's very quickly grown compared to the newsletter growth.
Yeah.
And that has been mostly, not completely, but mostly through the discoverability on Substack. So people recommending me to their subscribers, that kind of, that cross fertilization. And still doing talks like this, I mean, people will find it, and there are still the other avenues are there as well.
Yeah, we're gonna get you a bunch more subscribers, I think.
Yeah, come welcome aboard.
I can't let you go without my last few questions. The first of which is you suggested to me that artists can make marketing feel less like a chore. Can you elaborate on this?
Well, I suppose that goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you think about marketing as being sort of declarative, you stand on the hilltop and say, everyone, look at me. You're going to encounter all kinds of resistance to that, aren't you? I mean, it's just, yeah, horrible. It's giving me, yeah, the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it. But if you think about your newsletter, not as being news and not as being about you, but about your community and about building conversation, about connecting with people, and also about just sharing the stuff that really excites you, things that you're really interested to talk to people about or show them. Have you seen this artist? Isn't it amazing? Or just I wrote this week about seeing the big supermoon coming up at the same time as the sun's going down on one side and just suddenly having this real sense of walking on this rolling planet and everything turning, the days turning, and the sort of everydayness of the world. So I just wanted to talk about that. So if you can make, let's bracket with scare quotes the word marketing and think, what are we really trying to do as artists? When you're an artist, you connect with people one to one by one, and it's the quality of that connection is what's important. I'm not in the business of traffic marketing, selling lots and lots and lots of low-cost items. I make paintings, and they are meaningful investments for each one of my collectors, and they are important to me. I feel a connection with them, that they've connected with my work to the extent that they want to put it in their house and live with it every day. That's amazing. So if you can think about your newsletter as a way to build those connections and reach out to people one by one, think about writing a letter to one person and think about it in that sense. I'm skeptical of a lot of this real emphasis on numbers. Yeah, okay, 2,000 subscribers, that's great. It's very small fry in the big scheme of things. It's tiny. But those people are absolutely my people. They're my team. And they're into the things that I'm into. And what is most important to me is, like, I mean, for example, I got a response from somebody to my newsletter today, said, "Your newsletter was so beautiful, it made me cry." And that is just like, ugh, that my work here is done. You can take your stats
Yeah.
and stick them where the sun don't shine. I made someone cry today in a good way, happy tears. So that to me is all about, is connecting with people, because that's what art is about. It's human to human, heart to heart. And let's forget about what the marketing bros tell us, because it's not really applicable in so many ways to the work that we do as artists.
Absolutely.
Meeting each person, in their deepest heart. And that's where you want to connect with them.
That's so beautiful. I don't even want to ask my last two questions, but I'm going to. The first one is, you mentioned that you're butt in seat every Monday. How do you balance the rest of the week with the writing? And the rest of the week is the writing, mostly taking notes as you go along throughout your day and focused on studio work?
It has been quite focused on studio work this year, because I'm not working on a book specifically at the moment, although there was a burst of activity around that at the beginning of last year. And it might come back again if I decide that's a project that I really, really want to pursue. Yeah, the writing just sits alongside. And because it's part of the fabric of my work, it does come quite easily to me now. So it's maybe not applicable to everybody if you want to build that habit. And I think earlier on, I had more of a practice. I'm a great believer in the word practice. And if you want a practice of writing, it's like if you want a yoga practice, you just have to turn up and do it. And even if it's just for 10 minutes a day, you're building that habit, you're building that muscle. So I'm probably a bit more free and easy about it now than I used to be, because I knew I had to kind of build that muscle up. And so I would write a lot more in my journal. I'd have it with me everywhere I went. I'm a bit more relaxed about it. Sometimes I'll just take voice notes on my phone as well. I think we can get quite fixated on how it should be, but a lot of people have challenges with writing if you're dyslexic and so on. So there are so many great tools, and I think you're more clued up about that, Alison. You can use transcription services, you can make voice notes, and yeah, you can use a lot of different tools. So don't necessarily do what I do when you're
Well, I
trying to
do
build
love
a
what
habit.
you said, that you
Mhm.
built up this muscle to write regularly, and now it's part of you.
Yeah.
So you are able to be freer. It's kind of like my newsletter, which I wrote for 16 years every week without
Mm.
missing an issue. And it just did it. Like it had happened for so long, I didn't have to tell myself to do it or set aside time
Yeah.
for it or anything. It just happened. But it was a muscle for
Yeah, there's a
sure.
momentum, isn't there? There's this a really virtuous
Yeah.
cycle of momentum that keeps you going. It's building the muscle and the habit that is there's a hump to overcome
Yeah.
there for sure. But once it's there, then you can kind of relax into it a bit more. Yeah.
Do you do you see yourself as working on them side by side now, because they seem to be so intertwined for you? Do
Mm.
you don't, like, you're not a writer from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then you go in the studio. They're side by side.
Yeah, they're definitely side by side. I mean, there's always stacks of books everywhere that are waiting my attention, that I've got to go and read, or if I just want to sort of scribble something down. And yeah, they are, as you say, they are completely intertwined. Yeah, there's the Monday writing as much as anything about letting myself off the hook about all the other things I should be doing. We make a rod for our own back, so we always think we should be doing this, and I should be doing, and I should be doing that, and we can't carry all that much in our brains, really. I can't anyway. Let me speak for myself. So if I just say Monday is writing day, If I do get a chance to do a bit of drawing or something in the studio, that's great, but it's a bonus. It's a writing day. Friday, coaching day. My brain belongs to other people on a Friday. If I get a moment to do something for myself, that's a bonus. Well, Friday is for other people. And, then I've got studio days. If I've got a writing project, then I'll have more time set aside for that. But big chunks of time work for me. I know it won't work for everybody. I know people with neurodivergence might find that they have to ride their attention waves, as they come and be a bit more flexible about that and move between tasks. That's just what works for me.
Yeah. Thank you. That's wonderful. Okay, so last question. What are you looking forward to in 2025?
Well, the big thing at the moment is I've got an exhibition of work at the Royal Scottish Academy in January, February. That's in Edinburgh. It's not just me, but there is a lot of my work going into that show because it's the results of the award that I got. That was a McRobert Trust Award. That's what it's called. So that's the big thing. Thereafter, I'm going to catch my breath a bit and maybe turn my attention towards what the writing wants to be now. Where do I want that writing I've been doing to sit? Is it going to be in a Substack completely? Is there another book there? I don't know. We'll see where that wants to go. Yeah, but being in the studio will also always be part of that mix.
Sam, thank you so much. This is singing my song. I loved the integration of the writing and the importance of the writing and the discussion about marketing as not being, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing this, but about actually engaging with people and connecting one-on-one with people. Just really beautiful.
Mm,
So thank you so much for sharing your experience.
it's been a pleasure. Great to talk to you, Alyson. Really great. I enjoyed it.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of The Art Biz with Samantha Clark. I hope that Sam inspired you to write more about your art. In my programs at Art Biz Success, we call it meditating on your art. I, like Sam, really, truly believe, as I said, she was singing my song, I really believe that writing deepens the relationship between you and your art. Never mind all the people that you can connect with through your writing, and there are a lot of them, but just the relationship, I've seen it happen over and over again with the artists that I work with. The relationship that you have with your work, you will not regret it. So if you don't write for anyone else, write for yourself. If you want to pick up any of the links that we mentioned or resources that were mentioned, check out the show notes below. And hey, if you would ever rather listen than watch The Art Biz, check us out at wherever you get your podcasts. We're always there on all of the platforms. Thank you so much for watching and allowing me to be part of your artist's journey.